This is TechVibe Pittsburgh. It's your front row seat to all the innovation and technology happening across Pittsburgh. And this is Jonathan Kirsting from the Pittsburgh Technology Council, ready to take you on a tour of some of the coolest companies here in Pittsburgh. Are you struggling to make sense of data overload plaguing your organization and impacting critical decision making? Well, in this episode of TechVibe Pittsburgh, you're going to discover how resilient cognitive solutions is revolutionizing the way organizations leverage data and AI to make faster, more informed decisions, even in high-stakes, mission-critical environments. Today, we welcome Resilient Cognitive Solutions founder Bill Elm, and keep on listening so you can discover how to prevent alarm avalanches and other cognitive biases that lead to costly mistakes. Bill's also going to talk about strategies for empowering your team to fight like experts and thrive in data-rich environments. And finally, Bill's going to give you practical steps to audit your systems for hidden brittleness that could lead to catastrophic failures. So keep on listening now to gain the insights that could transform your organization and how it makes critical decisions. Let's welcome Bill to the show today. So Bill, very happy to have you stop by TechVibe today. I'm just a huge fan of what you guys do. True story. I ride my bicycle past your offices quite a bit on the south side. And I look at your front door, I'm like, they're working on really hard problems in there. And I'm so excited to be able to tell our listeners what you're working on. And like I said, I'm just excited about it.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So first and foremost, Bill, just tell me about yourself real quick. You're like a measured smart dude as far as I'm concerned. Like, what's your background?
Yeah. So I've got a pretty eclectic background, which makes me a little unusual, like our earlier discussion. So I've got 2 degrees from Carnegie Mellon, electrical engineering, and then went active duty Army, which led to an active and reserve career over 25 years. So,
awesome. That's fantastic.
So that was a lot of real world command and control, real world intelligence analysis that did that for a living on that side. When I got off active duty, I was looking for something cool to work on, something fun. I interviewed a lot of places, and I interviewed at Westinghouse right after 3 Mile Island.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
And I walked in, and the group interviewing me was part of the advanced technology division. And the job was to redesign the control room as part of the response to why 3 Mile Island was the event that it was.
That would get my attention. That's quite the project. My goodness.
So
wow.
So I said to the hiring manager, I said, that sounds really cool. I was excited too. And I said, how are you going to do that? And he said, that's the first thing we have to figure out.
Interesting.
So first we have to figure out how to think about this, and then we have to think about it and actually solve the problem. He had me. I was hooked.
Like, I want to do it.
Been hooked and been doing it ever since.
Ever since. Wow, that's like 1980 or like 79.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
So I'm over 40 some years
into the business
of doing this.
And when did you found RCS?
RCS spun out of a big defense contractor, big defense company in 2007.
Okay.
So we're coming into our 18th year.
That's amazing. Wow, 18 years, man. That's awesome.
It goes fast. Yeah.
It doesn't it? Yep. It's so cool. And you guys are located on the south side, like I said. I ride my bike past your offices there. So
in the south side, the irony is I find out that the building we're in used to be the steel company drafting office.
Interesting. I love it.
And it was the company that my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather worked for. So there's some
cool.
big circle of life thing happening here.
That happens a lot in Pittsburgh. Actually, one of our member companies actually set up shop in the space that my great-grandfather, he was a blacksmith and shoot horses on the south side, and his building became a family business. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Pittsburgh. So that's so cool.
Amazing. Yeah.
I love that. So give us the elevator pitch. We're riding to the 16th floor so our listeners can get a backdrop of what RCS is about. And then we're going to jump into some really fun questions about your mission to design and deliver these awesome support systems.
Yep. In talking to Audrey a while ago, it's just we focus on things that are too hard for everybody else. So
I like that. Yeah.
And the easy things don't excite us to not where we go.
You're always up for a good challenge then, right?
Exactly.
Very
so
cool.
That sort of is our business model. We get phone calls from customers who have a major project investment that is strategic to them, and it's struggling. They call us. I call it a cathartic moment. And sometimes they're very cathartic, like the collision of the USS McCain that killed sailors.
Absolutely.
To us is directly attributable to the engineering design of the bridge, the technology they put in the ship that caused that accident and killed those sailors cost a lot of money, risk the whole vessel.
Right. So certain design changes up front could have avoided that. And those are things that you can help figure out to avoid that in the future.
Exactly. So
cool.
We understand how people really think and really work in the real world, and we build the systems differently to fit. So we call it ergonomics for your brain.
I got to remember that. That is fantastic. Yes.
When you go into the hardware store and you're picking a power tool, you pick it up, you hold it, it's ergonomics for your hand. Nobody is really thinking enough about building these tools to fit the way you think. So ergonomics for your brain, in a sense, matching the way people think about the world and deal with the world and struggle to get their job done.
That has to be some of the hardest things to build when you're building ergonomics for the brain, because our hand sizes are a little bit different here and there, but I think brains are way more different than someone's hands. So.
And frankly, it's harder to assess that fit. Right? So
Definitely.
You pick something up, all the physical tricks work.
And that fit can change based upon stress and things like that.
Exactly.
So you are up for a tough challenge. My goodness. So that's so cool.
That takes our roots all the way back 3 Mile Island, and then all of that research in how people see the world, how people think, cognitive science, all of those things that are really the same underlying science behind artificial intelligence. We're using that science for this ergonomics for your brain, for understanding how to fit it to the way people think.
And make sure that the task that it's assigned to, you can do that task and everything.
Well, if your job is to do that task, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it any way you can, right? And then the user gets blamed for having fixation biases and all of these error characteristics. The user gets blamed. But we've proven, the research proves that the tool you give them can either make those errors or prevent those errors. So we're in the business of preventing those decision-making errors.
Well, tell me about some of the companies and projects you've worked on, just from the standpoint of, you mentioned like with the McCain being able to set the bridge up differently, working on control systems for nuclear reactors, for crying out loud. Like these are some heavy-duty applications.
Yeah, these are high-stakes decisions, mission-critical, business-critical decisions that big money, big risk to life, and sometimes it's hidden in small places. So
definitely
why you struggle with your autonomous driving car or why the car hits somebody pushing a bicycle across the street in Arizona. The issues appear very complex, but they really resolve down to some pretty well understood principles about how people think and operate in the world.
Right.
So the field started with that advanced control room design. One of my first patents was the alarm system for that environment. And that one is still relevant today.
Really?
The characteristic was called an alarm avalanche. So you have a big disruption, and suddenly the system is throwing alarms at you faster than you can read.
It's just one giant alarm at that point. And you don't know where to start.
Pretty much.
Which alarm do you put out first to put out the next,
exactly,
right?
Which is what you want that system to help you do. Where should I focus? Where do I go? Which fire do I put out first to try to mitigate and bring things back? But if it's burying you in alarm messages, which now all of these very powerful analytics and AI agents and automated autonomous cyber agents, they can send you way more messages than you can read.
Exactly.
So it's gotten worse, not better.
Yeah, I guess we're just being overloaded now.
Exactly.
But you help simplify that and make sense of it so people can make things actionable.
Exactly.
Honestly, but I think about this is why I love talking to companies like yours, because you're literally saving people's lives. You're keeping people safe on so many levels, not just the people that are using equipment, but something happens and there's people downwind, for lack of a better term, you're saving their lives too.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot of responsibility to carry.
It is. And the team really feels that. So we take our job very seriously.
Definitely.
And every design we come out with, we sign that with our sort of professional credential.
Okay.
That thing won't fail.
Absolutely.
That this thing will fight and win in the most challenging conditions.
And that's heavy. That to me is, man.
That's what gets me up in the morning.
You're getting like an adrenaline rush out of this.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
That's for sure. So tell me about some of your products. You got a multiple products that are really unique out there. Like I said, this is something I just don't see many companies offering things like this, because what you do is very niche, but just so important. Things like your Beast, the motion scope and shot and so forth. Tell me a little bit about some of these and how they work.
Yep. So all of those are really dual use adaptations of our primary effort, or at least our recent efforts in the DoD and the Intel community.
Okay.
And part of that, it's not quite the question you asked, but part of that is driven by the command and control people and the Intel analysis people recognize the importance of decision-making. And it's very easy to get distracted by data volumes and build a bigger data lake. And we talked about data centers the other day.
Yeah, we did.
And what we find on the commercial sector is that people go through what I call 3 generations of thought.
Okay.
And the first generation is, I got to build a data lake and get a bunch of data.
Right.
And they invest in all that infrastructure and plumbing and data acquisition and build a few petabytes. And I call that Gen 1. And then they get that up and running and then ask themselves, what am I really doing with all that data? It's all there, and how are we mining it? And that moves them into Gen 2.
Okay.
So you start then applying some data science analytics and visual analytics, and you're building power tools for your data environment. And there's some very interesting papers out of Harvard Business Review where the C-suite, in particular the CEOs, are feeling that they're not getting the benefit, the real decision, operational benefit of their investment in all that data and all those analytics.
It's like, where's all this great stuff from this data that we have,
and
right?
In fact, some of them talk about it. They feel that they are slower now because now they get this big report out of their data side that they have a fiduciary responsibility to review and incorporate, but it doesn't really help them make the decision. So they're still left with an intuitive kind of gut check the decision, yet they had to wait to read the big report.
Big thick report,
from the other
right?
Side,
Yeah.
Right? So they're spending a lot of money. They get these big reports that they have to incorporate, yet they're left holding the bag and making these high-risk decisions almost the way they were before, but with big reports on top of it. And that then moves them into Gen 3, which is really our focus.
That's where you come in to help put this and make use of all that data.
Right. So that's really about bringing those, what we call knowledge-driven strategies, on top of all the data-driven and procedure-driven strategies. And I don't know if you're familiar with Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, a big hit not too long ago. That's part of what it's about. You can do things instinctively very quickly, but you can do very profound knowledge-driven strategies that are rigorous, but they're slower to do.
Right.
So how do you balance that and combine that?
Exactly.
So what we're about is bringing all that forward into these environments so you can make those big decisions with knowledge-driven strategies. You asked about some of the instantiations of that.
Exactly.
For example,
Tell me.
The BEAST product is...
First off, it's called BEAST. That's pretty cool.
It's called BEAST. It's an acronym. So it's Broadening Enabled Analytic Structured Tradecraft. But
good work on the acronym there. And I
think it was actually a backronym. And what it's really about is there have been these theoretical discussions of how to proceduralize that analytic process. So it's more, they call it rigorous. So it's more accurate. It's traceable. It has these characteristics of quality that you want it to have if you're going to bet the nation's security audit.
Oh my goodness.
The trick is that those techniques never really worked at scale, at speed. So now you have all this data. It's moving very fast. You have uncertainty in the data. You have missing data, and you have very limited time to make those recommendations. So you could go to the class and learn the theory, but it was like doing a long division by hand.
Yeah, exactly.
You want a calculator, so you're not doing a long division. So what BEAST really is our decision-centered approach to build an environment where with these embedded AI agents, the environment and the analyst now are in this cooperative sort of dance, and you achieve that kind of rigor in a way that really works.
You make it sound so easy. I can imagine the algorithms behind all this.
Exactly. So you want it to feel easy and feel natural. In fact, we've got this sort of 90-second test. So if we can't train you up to get going on the thing in about 90 seconds, we didn't build it right.
Okay.
And they tend to look, I call them drug crazed. They look completely foreign compared to histograms or pie charts or trendline graphics. The graphics are tailor-made to represent those decisions to you in a way that you can engage and drive. The embedded agents are not in charge. The embedded agents are providing a service in the right context in this decision environment. So what the BEAST lets you do is consider vastly different possibilities that were never practical when you were doing all this by hand.
Exactly, yeah.
And with the right auto query engines and relevance engines, several other services we have embedded in it, you can now consider those outliers. You can, and we've had cases, in the real world cases, where an analyst had maybe it's this. Could it really be the adversary doing this very unusual thing? And normally they would not have time to explore that. It's just such a low probability.
But Beast has the ability to make that a probability you could look at and say, this is something that maybe is going on.
You can stack that one in there with all the high likelihood ones, and it will emerge forward and say, and in fact, we had a case where that one turned out to be correct.
Really? See, this is why I get excited, because I can sleep better at night sometimes thinking about this, because I know the government's using this technology to keep us safe. It's, my goodness, man. It's so cool.
It starts to have all of those innovative chasm, crossing the chasm kind of dilemma to it, where it's so radical and so different against a sort of an ingrained, routinized velocity that now you're shaking up the whole environment.
Yeah, it's almost maybe disruptive to a certain degree, because people are like, what? Like, this is something that someone's not used to, but then they're able, once they become accustomed to the tool, then it becomes this invaluable part of how they're doing business. I'd have to think.
And that takes about 90 seconds.
And that's the 90-second test.
Once they get in and start, they will complain violently about how it looks, and it doesn't look like my current tools. And as soon as they touch it, we get feedback from military officers and analysts. They say, where has this been my whole career?
Yeah. And now, is this technology that can actually be used in the field, or is this like in the back office? Like, how is the technology often deployed?
It can be both.
Yeah.
And that starts to depend on how the infrastructure is built, how the architecture of
I'm just always curious to think that there can be these powerful tools that, like, maybe a soldier or someone in the field is just carrying with them, that they can do this and start making decisions as things are unfolding in front of them. It's slow. And then I get to say, RCS is doing that, and they're from Pittsburgh.
That's our goal right there.
I love, because I think, like, I look what RCS does, and the fact that you guys are here in Pittsburgh, and I feel like you could build this company any place you would want to build this place, but you do it here in Pittsburgh. And that's what's making Pittsburgh so awesome, is that we got companies like yours that are doing really important work like this.
And that is our Pittsburgh roots, our relationship with CMU and Pitt, and again, that history that goes all the way back to Westinghouse.
Yeah.
This is our center of mass.
I'm glad you guys are here, man, because I get to talk to you about it. If you were someplace else, I wouldn't, because you wouldn't be. I'm the Pittsburgh Tech Council, for crying out loud. That's awesome, man.
And that disruptive comment that you made, that really goes with our mission statement. So our goal is to make revolutionary advances in effective decision support for mission-critical and business-critical decisions. That's our mission statement. So we're not looking to make a minor increment. We're not looking for 2%. We're looking for a game-changing leap forward.
Game-changing, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So tell me about some other stuff you have going on here. If I go to your website, we'll have our website in the liner notes of this. I really encourage people to go there, because you got a really nice website, first off, but it really shows how your stuff works. Like, it makes it very, very actionable. And you look at stuff like motion scope and shot and so forth. Like, once again, these are some really cool technologies.
Right. And motion scope in particular is one of those interesting cases. The customer had invested a lot of effort in computer vision analytics, which is regarded as one of the mature sides of AI, highly accurate, very good. And they cranked up that significant investment, and then did what I describe as delivered that bare iron algorithm to the user. So they got that thing tuned up, they got the accuracy numbers that they wanted, they tested it, and then they deployed it, and it was rejected. And
really?
Now we got one of those cathartic moment phone calls.
Okay, yeah.
And so the program manager calls and says, we're at end game here. We've invested all this time and all this money.
They're like, pull our bacon out of the fire, please.
And we have not only user acceptance, we have user rejection. And that happens with what's called knowledge workers. A doctor in an operating room is not going to let a piece of equipment in that is not helping them take care of the patient.
Exactly.
And then, in fact, that happened with some automated infusion pumps, some computerized infusion pumps. I have a picture of these things out in the hallway because the doc said, I won't have them.
Don't trust it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that happened in this case with these computer vision analytics. Everybody thought it was a great idea. Everybody went all happy joy over these analytic engines. And the way they handed that algorithm right off the bench, handed it to the user and said, this is going to help you. And the already busy analyst, who has already got all of these pressures and trying to make these important decisions, said, it's not helping me. And they just turned it off and wouldn't use it. So motion scope evolved from that. And we went back, and it's tough at the end because now there's very limited time left. There's very limited budget left. They've got a lot of running software. So it's hard to make those changes.
Absolutely.
Our degree of freedom is tighter and smaller. We went back and did our decision-centered process, analyzed what those analysts were really trying to do, designed that view, that dashboard, and then connected all of those existing analytics in the proper place behind it. So, and you go from staring just right at the plumbing of the algorithm to suddenly you almost can't tell where the algorithm is, because it's expressing to you in terms of my job and my analysis and my results I'm trying to get.
Okay, mind is blown here on that. That is what I'm talking about. My goodness.
And it went from not being accepted to now, as soon as the analysts saw our implementation of it, they asked if they could have it with twice as much data in it.
Could you load her up, please? Oh my goodness, that's so cool.
And it's profoundly different. The way they're able, for example, there's a big discussion of black swan conditions where it's that unusual thing. There's a small number of black swans in the world, so you mostly think of swans as white swans. And that's maybe some inside baseball discussion from analysts. But that's the term they use.
Yeah.
And being able to detect those and discover those in this massive volume of data that's flying at you very fast.
Yeah, when all those look for is white swans, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you got to make money. You got to go. You got to make decisions. You got to get through it. The boss is waiting. So being able to detect those in motion scope, they just leap right off the page. And we have these examples of the analysts saying, wait a minute, what's that right there?
No way.
And they can see through the noise and see through that pace and rock onto it. So motion scope was a big game changer in terms of dealing with both massive data repositories.
Yeah.
So we're talking about lots and lots of frames of lots and lots of video.
So is that how it happens a lot, where a client comes to you to we got this problem, can you solve it? You solve it and you realize that the solution you built for them is something that you could build for other customers. So you white label that to a certain degree, or not white label, but just bring it out and say, yeah, we have this thing and we can now customize it to what you would need it to do, or something like that.
Yes. And that's
and
really
then you give it a cool name like Beast or Motion Scope.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And part of that is that there is direct applications to those things. There are people on the commercial side doing imagery analysis for studying bridges or wildfires, observing wildfires from drones. So there's a lot of commercial applications of motion-driven kind of analytics. So then the alignment's natural at that point.
Love it.
Sometimes it's deeper than that, where it's the real decision characteristic. It's somebody trying to find that needle in a haystack. And if we solve that problem on the defense side, the needle in the haystack problem applies to a marketing executive looking for that unique customer out of their customer base.
So cool.
So that it can be deeper in terms of the core decisions, and that gives you the dual use.
That's why, the dual use stuff gets me so interested. And at the Tech Council, we absolutely love this, because we love it when our member companies are working with the government that can pay them to get the solution built. But then, of course, once that's built, they can also take it to the regular market and use it there. And you just described that perfectly. So I love that. That is so interesting. Very cool. Because you have this thing, and I love that. I just like saying brittleness audit. It sounds like this is pretty hardcore stuff. So are you able to go out there and check out people's systems and see where the failures are going to happen? Tell me about this brittleness
audit. Yeah.
Where is it going to break?
Yeah. So that came from some government research projects that we had, where we've found over having done this for 40 years personally, and almost 20 with RCS, the crew kept saying, a customer would bring something in and I'm just pointing at where the issues are. That's going to break. This is a problem here. We've seen this before. And they kept asking me, how do you do that? And I said, you see the same thing over and over. As part of this project, we were able to distill out the 28 very common design mistakes, systems engineering concept mistakes.
Yeah.
That if you do that, you will have this kind of issue. And the very interesting thing is, it may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen the day after tomorrow, but it's a latent flaw. That's why we call it a brittleness.
It's going to get you at some point.
It's a crack back there just waiting for somebody to step on it a little bit too hard.
This is waiting for that bus to drive over and the bridge falls in, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what was embedded in the bridge of the McCain. That ship had sailed for thousands of hours and never had that issue until the alignment of all those things came.
Those stars aligned, and then that flaw on the bridge is what allowed the ships to collide.
Exactly.
Unfortunately,
and what we're able to do with the brittleness audit is we can ask for what we call these indicators. These probe questions. Do you do this? Do you have that in this place in your workflow? Is this part of your concept? If you start answering yes to these, then there's a very good potential you've got a crack in that beam, and someday the bus is going to fall through the bridge, right?
Oh, my goodness.
And we're able to then, in a forward sense, if people are envisioning their design. If a new entrepreneur is thinking about a new product offering, we can get ahead of those issues and say, you want to do this a little different because you're designing in a brittleness that somebody's going to pay a big price for.
Yeah. That just seems like something you just want to do for whatever giant project you have going on, just to get that, glean that data back and say, this is where it could go wrong. And then be like, whoa, it just seems like an obvious kind of step you would take towards deploying something.
It's in the spirit of the way people do typical human factors heuristic kind of audits on the UI. But it's deeper than that in terms of this joint decision making. So it really gets to that point of how people are interacting with the tech, and we're looking for those edges. So people can say you've designed something the knobs are hard for people to operate, which is the typical heuristics. And you can think of these as almost these decision-centered heuristics to go further into that. Say it will get you one of these days. And it will get you in a big way that's painful or expensive or damaging.
It's interesting. I think about this. I'm a total car nerd. I'm thinking, I wish Volkswagen would have worked with you guys when they developed their infotainment systems for the line of cars, because they're terrible. And I think if they would have worked with you, they would have had something that the brain can actually use.
Exactly. And what's interesting is those things are fully compliant with best practices for look and feel and aesthetic. And so there's nothing at that level that's wrong, quote unquote. It's more deeply rooted in how people interact and do task switching, because your real job's to be a driver.
Yeah. When you have to swipe 2 screens back to turn a heated seat on, it's not cool.
Exactly. So the brittleness audit is interesting. The way we have it now is we can perform that audit. So it can be a team of experts that are really good at this, and we can really find those very subtle indications and provide a very thorough analysis. So we offer that as a service. Or the customer can actually take a short course and get the tool and do it themselves.
I see.
So the customer can actually embed it in their
What a great idea. It's something that where if you're developing product after product or whatever it is, that you learn this and get it, so then you can take it and you're teaching a man to fish this way. You're not just giving him the fish, but you're teaching him to fish. I like that. That's awesome.
And we've piloted that at a major government enterprise, and their software developers were very successful with that. And they found over 80% of the same brittlenesses that we found as we did it ourselves. So we used us as the standard in terms of this is experts doing best practice. And we had these new guys that took a 1-day course.
And they were getting pretty close to that number.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, that's amazing.
And they certainly found all the big ones. So that 20% were the subtle ones that weren't really the risk factor.
I love it, man.
So brittleness audit, we're very excited about. But again, it's something new. Right. Of course, it's something that's not in current practice. They don't teach it in Agile Scrum Master School.
But that's why I love being able to get the word out about this type of stuff. Because I'm like, you guys have some stuff that can really help companies, and it's just they got to know about it and use it for crying out loud.
So everybody should be brittleness certified.
I like that. How brittle are you?
Exactly.
Very brittle, but not anymore because we found all the brittleness.
Yep. Exactly.
We strengthened it up.
Yep.
That's so cool. I love it. As we've been talking about all this stuff, I just keep thinking about like how data overload, it's just become a thing now, and that becomes something that if you're a human being trying to do something, you're responsible for maintaining something or watching something, how that can just completely send you awry and accidents can happen. And you guys help like tame this data overload, I think, for lack of a better term. Just tell me more about how you guys work on data overload and how you help you really address our decision-making processes for our women and men out there that are really working and are in some very life and death situations sometimes.
And it's really not just them. That the data overload you talk about is everyday life in kind of the whole internet environment.
Yeah.
We were, as we were working on the beast, one of the big issues of the beast is the volume and velocity of data arriving to the analyst. So you don't want to overlook something from yesterday just because you got a big bucket full of data that arrived today.
Exactly.
And under time pressures, it's very easy to do that. So people adopt what we call coping strategies.
I can just keep going ahead.
You have to.
Yeah,
right?
you have no other choice. You got to keep moving. Yeah.
I have to have an answer for the boss by noon today. And you have to find a way. You can't possibly read all those words. They're just physically impossible to read that fast. So what do? There's sampling tricks. There's sampling heuristics.
Okay. Yeah.
People have to find ways to reduce that volume and deal with it. And that's what induces these cognitive biases and these errors. So if we can turn that around and express that volume of data in fundamentally different ways like we did in the Beast, people then operate differently. They don't have to adopt these crutches and these coping strategies. They can thrive in that big data. And for example, with Motion Scope, the limit of what they could do with the original version was about 10 minutes of video data. They achieved data overload.
At the 10-minute mark, I'm checking out at this point. Yeah.
Their goal was 10,000 hours.
Oh my goodness.
So that's how far off their curve they were.
10 minutes to 10,000 hours.
Their target was 10,000. They blew up at 10 minutes. When we got done with Motion Scope, they asked for 20,000 hours, and it worked at that scale.
Really?
Right. It just completely inverts the model. It doesn't say, read everything as fast as you can and make your best answer. It doesn't say, pick the 20 best ones some magical way with a sampling rate. And frankly, it doesn't ask the AI to find the answer for you, which is what a lot of sort of technical solutions tend to do.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Right. So
but it makes sense. Yeah,
I can't possibly read it all, and the typical answer is let the AI do it, because the AI will in fact generate some kind of answer.
But there could be hallucinations in there.
You start to get all of those factors in the thing, and now you're left with a take it or leave it situation. It generates the answer. It's now noon. Do we accept that answer? Do we check the answer? I don't have time to go back and read it. What's happening here? Improper introduction of those AI services starts to create its own set of dilemmas and biases and errors that are that we've now introduced further stressors into that environment. So again, by designing from that decision-making back, we're able to employ those in a way we call precision AI. So we can precisely define what we need those services to do and how they're going to be offered back to that decision maker in a way that fits into their decision-making framework.
And that's how they would normally go about business to make their decisions. You can plug that in there and bring them the more information.
Exactly.
The 20,000 hours as opposed to the 10 minutes.
In the way they think about it, which really gets to that. I mentioned some of that underlying cognitive science. Some of what we draw on is early studies in expertise. And a lot of it was at Carnegie Mellon with Herb Simon, where they studied, for example, chess grandmasters. And I don't know if you ever saw or recall the movie The Queen's Gambit.
I know of it, but yeah, absolutely.
So there's a scene early in that movie where the old guy in the basement hands her a book. And what that ties back to is that was one of the first books written about chess knowledge.
Okay.
And it turns out they originally thought that chess grandmasters just had a memory savant kind of capability to remember moves and pieces in games. Mm-hmm. So if you could memorize thousands of chess games, you were a chess grandmaster.
Okay.
So they test their memory, and they're just like you and me, they're average.
Really? Interesting.
So
I'm feeling better about myself.
So the researchers go back and say, then what makes a chess grandmaster different from a chess novice? I'm giving you the short version here.
Mm-hmm.
What they came back to is chess grandmasters think abstractly about the game of chess.
Okay.
So they think and talk and reason at things called power projection and mobility and blocking. And those aren't pieces on the chessboard. Those are abstract, emergent characteristics.
Right, and that's just what you guys do. You're really doing that and then bringing it in so you can see that 20,000 hours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's really how we deal with that data overload. We're not showing you the data. We're showing these abstractions derived from the data that really are how experts think about that condition.
Exactly.
So what we say is our systems, and we've seen this in our testing, our systems help novices fight like experts. And recently, in fact, it was a meeting here. I had somebody from SEI sitting next to me and say, wait a minute, I'm an expert. What's that do to me? So sometimes the expert will feel threatened if novices.
For sure. Yeah. Wait a second. Yeah. Someone can come in and be as smart as me. What does that mean for me?
But what I said to him was, in fact, what we find is that experts are now unencumbered. They're freed from all that friction and all that baggage and all that stuff that slowed them down. So now experts fight like superheroes. So you've moved everybody up a bracket in terms of getting all that out of the way and all that friction, all the sand in the gears that makes it hard to do your job.
Gone.
If you build it from the way you think about your job, the way an expert thinks about your job, then you fight like an expert. And in fact, we found an implicit training effect. Novices learn to think like experts because that expert model is baked right into the environment.
Yeah, it gets them on board for it and everything.
Right.
So that's so amazing. Wow. I just love hearing these types of things. It really just makes me go,
You got me on my soapbox here.
But it's all about, it's why we have this. But so what I love about what you're doing is the fact that like, you're never done. It's you only get better and better at what you do. What has you really gassed for the future? Like, where do you see some of this stuff going? Because I know we always laugh at ourselves when we look back like a couple of years at what we thought was so great and what we could do. And we're like, yeah, that's pretty easy now.
Yeah, I understand. The interesting thing now is that what we do is now ever more critical as the pace of human knowledge ramps up, when we've got applications of the beast for like medical diagnosis, as opposed to an intelligence analyst trying to solve what's going on from their data. A medical diagnosis is similar. So if you think about evidence-based,
you're looking at all different types of data and
test results and things, and does this patient have this or does this patient have that? It really is still an analysis problem. Just now you're thinking of it in a white doctor's coat and
there's a human life there on the other side of it, and hoping you get it right.
Yep. So we started looking at the things like the doubling rate for medical knowledge. How long does it take for human knowledge of medicine to double? And I'm not going to get the curve exactly right. Early 1900s, I think the number was like 10 years for that medical knowledge to double. We came back and estimated that it was probably doubling every year, and then got corrected by a senior doc here in the region to say the recent papers are coming out saying 5 times.
Okay.
5x per year. So that's an exponential curve.
Yeah,
so how does a doctor keep up with that kind of rate of change?
That's why something like this, as a doctor is making a diagnosis, they have something they can look at, converse with, for lack of a better term.
Keep up with that.
Keep up with that, and then bring you the right stuff.
And help you discover the right stuff, help you consider those unusual black swan
the other
options.
Weird cases that could be out there.
Exactly.
That's so exciting. Right. See, once again, your stuff, it's like saving people's lives.
Yes, it can. It applies directly right there.
It's pretty awesome. Man.
So with doubling rates like that, and there's similar things on just general human knowledge, just internet data sizes and things, it's an explosive curve. So the data universe is exploding. The number of AI analytics running is exploding. So now you've got these analytics chirping at you and producing output on top of the data overload. So you've got this sort of AI avalanche on top of the data overload. So the people today are more challenged than operators at 3 Mile Island. So data overload is bigger, better, faster than ever. You start then adding in agentic AI, where now you've got agent-based AI that has authority to take action on your behalf.
That's where it gets real crazy at that point. Right. Yeah.
So there, to us, you have to get your human AI teaming right, because it's working for you. There's somebody.
And it's making decisions.
And it's doing
and acting on them.
Exactly. And there are environments where the compelling business case, for example, cyber defense, the rate of data and the speed of cyber actions and counteractions is faster than humans can react.
For sure.
So you want to have those very fast cyber agents out there working for you. How do you supervise them? How do you build this decision
How do you manage those suckers? Yeah,
exactly.
They're unruly sometimes.
Right. And things about the current sort of digital world or the digital ecosystem make it more and more important that we build effective human AI teams. And that's what we're talking about. That's what we do, is building those things. So it's now cyber defense ergonomics for your brain.
Yeah.
And you feel like you can control that swarm of cyber agents, or that swarm of drones in the air, or that autonomous Black Hawk that's flying around in an effective way to get that job done.
That's what it comes down to. And what I love is, for more than 40 years, you've been at the forefront of this. You know your stuff, and I got to talk to you about it. So I think that's pretty amazing.
Thank you. We are the world leader in cognitive systems engineering, and we take a lot of pride in that. We're published. I was on a 40-year panel for the field a couple of years ago. But we keep our heads down and do the work.
That's the way Pittsburghers are, man. That's all good. We love that. But this is your kind of chance to shine a little bit, because I just think that's why I love these conversations, to let the world know that this is what you're working on here.
We are very interested in helping the region not fall into these traps and defeat these cognitive biases. If we're doing space exploration like we are here in the north side, that control room shouldn't be a map and videos, right? We shouldn't be making them the old 3 Mile Island control room looking way. So it's everywhere, and we're eager to help.
That's what it's all about. Bill, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk to me. It was just a fascinating conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I know our listeners did as well, too. Which is why I remind our listeners, you want to get content like this, just follow us here. We'll deliver it to you every time we have a new podcast dropping. This has been Jonathan Kirsting with the Pittsburgh Technology Council, having way too much fun having conversations like this pretty much each and every day.